Recording in progress.
Welcome, good evening. This is the meeting for the Sacramento Metropolitan Fire District Board of Directors for May 8th, 2025. Can we get the roll, please?
Yes. Director Gould.
Present.
Director Stark.
Sure.
Director Weber.
Present.
Director Wood.
Here.
Director Costa.
Here.
Director Clark.
Here.
Director Rice.
Present.
And I did receive an email and a request from Director Jones to participate remotely this evening. Director Jones, are you with us on Zoom? No. She has not joined us on Zoom, so.
All right.
Thank you.
Move on. We'll do the pledge to the flag. Director Rice, would you lead us, please?
Yes. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Director. The Metro Cable announcement. Today's meeting is being recorded. It will be Comcast on Metro Cable Channel 14. The recording will be closed captioned and video streamed at metro14live.saccounty.gov. Today's meeting will replay at 1:30 on Saturday, May 10th, and again at 6 p.m. on Monday, May 12th, 2025 on Metro Cable Channel 14. Once posted, the recording of this meeting can be viewed on demand at youtube.com/Metro Cable 14. Now is the time for public opportunity for members of the public to discuss matters on or not on the agenda. Do we have any speakers, Madam Clerk?
I have two speaker cards, both for presentation item number 1, the electrified fencing.
All right, and we did talk about this, and we're going to go ahead and allow them to speak after the presentation.
Okay.
Out of order. So do we have any other speakers that are interested in speaking online or in person?
If you're interested in speaking online, please use the raise your hand feature. No response.
All right,
Thank you.
And we will take those two speakers once we have that first presentation after that presentation. Moving on, I've got a consent calendar. Do I have any questions on consent?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion we adopt. Second.
I've got a motion, a second. Would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Director Gould.
Aye.
Director Stark.
Aye.
Director Clark.
Aye.
Director Rice.
Aye.
Director Weber.
Aye.
Director Costa.
Aye.
Director Wood.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
All right, we'll move on now to presentation items. We'll start with presentation item number 1, Fire Marshal Nygren. Welcome. Good evening.
Good evening, President Wood, Board of Directors, Chief House, Amy Nygren, Fire Marshal for the Community Risk Reduction Division. We'll wait till that presentation comes up on board there. All right, at the last Board of Directors meeting, you received a presentation by Amarok. They outlined their technology for electrified security fencing, the history of the product, and how the systems operate. They voiced their concerns regarding fire prevention standard number 27, in addition to some concerns regarding changes that occurred in 2023. They expressed concerns regarding existing gate requirements and stated that no other jurisdiction has required similar conditions. Electrified security fencing, Amarok's request was to withdraw Fire Prevention 27 and to approve NOx orders for electrified security fence installations. So to talk about the fire prevention standards, one of the items that was addressed was that the fire prevention standard was not approved by the policy committee. A local standard is different than our normal policies that we have here. The California Fire Code is adopted by the state of California. We have local ordinances and that adopts the fire code. And within that is a standard. So a standard is an industry term that we use throughout the state and throughout the country. And this is to address matters that are not provided for in the fire code. As you can see there, I have the fire code section. So you'll see a lot of things within the fire code that states as per the fire code official or at the discretion of the fire chief. those type of items, we put those into standards that are local, so it's more operational based. It's not something that would go to a typical policy. One of the items that they discussed was Assembly Bill 2371, also Civil Code 835. What you'll see there on the left-hand side is a list of requirements that are within that law. It's the same items that we have in our standard, which was actually out prior. We've had those in our standard before the law became effective. As you can see, it requires a non-electrified perimeter fence or wall. It's also important to note that that law does not apply to special districts. It applies for cities and counties, but special districts are not addressed within that law. Gates and barriers. Gates and barriers are required, or we're allowed to permit those through the California Fire Code. And our local standard for that outlines the requirements for gates and standards and all of the items that were required to be installed. For example, knocks, click to enter, free exit loops, pedestrian gates, those are required by the California Fire Code. When you have a building, you have to exit and egress all the way to the public way, so that pedestrian gate gets them out to the public way, or they have to have a safe dispersal area on site. That safe dispersal area has to be 50 feet away from a building, 5 feet square foot per person for occupant load, and it has to be signed and designated. So one of the challenges that many of these locations have for a safe dispersal area is a lot of them are car dealerships and things like that. Giving up that size real estate is really difficult for some of these locations, but it is an option. Again, the perimeter fencing is a technical requirement for the electrified security fences to be installed. So overview and collaboration. We've had several meetings with Amarok over the years over fire prevention standards, our fire prevention standard number 27, and they're actually great. Keith and I have worked multiple times on improving our standard and making it easier to use. A big concern I had was to ensure safety for our first responders. I did not want, in the worst case situations, our crews to arrive middle of the night, they just woke up, it's raining, those conditions to hinder what they're encountering. And one of the things that, at the recommendation of Amarok, was an audible visual device that the minute that gate moves, it would send a signal if it had not been de-energized. So there's an audible visual device that was added to our standard at their recommendation to ensure that there's that extra level of protection for our crews. On October 2nd of last year, we were presented with AB 2371, outlining a permit for the existing gates would be required. And then we had a discussion with our general counsel, ensuring that we are in good standings with following our current policies and procedures. An email was sent to Amarok reviewing our submittal status on November 22nd. One of the things that was referenced in the last presentation that there's 29 outstanding projects waiting for permits. And as you can see there, we had one permit canceled. So I'll go back, there's 26 total since 2017. One of those permits was canceled, 4 permits were issued, and the projects were finalized. 7 permits were issued. We have not been called for inspections. Projects have not been finalized, and some of those permits have since expired. 9 permits have outstanding egress or gating and fencing issues. 3 permits require resubmittal on Amarok's behalf, and 2 permits can be released by Metro Fire, which were actually done this week. Modifications from Metro Fire. Currently, we have an update for fire prevention standard number 27 to provide some more clarification, and it was based on the conversation we had last October on the standard, and it's regarding the concerns for those existing gates and barriers. We will be reviewing those based on the code or standard that was required at the time that those gates were installed. So a lot of times it's difficult to decide or determine when those gates were installed. We do use current technology, we use Google Maps, GIS features to find out, and our own files to find out if they were permitted. Right now, the 2001 is our date for when permits were required. We don't have history for our previous jurisdictions. So using that date moving forward, if a permit was required at that time, which it was, they will, if it was obtained, they will move forward with their projects, no additional requirements. If a permit was required but they did not obtain one, they will have to meet the current requirements and standards as any other code enforcement project would in our jurisdiction. So for example, I go out to do a tenant improvement, we see something was not permitted, they're required to meet the current standards for that project, whether it be a door, exiting, anything like that. And if it was prior to that, so if we can see that the project was, or the gates were installed prior to 2001, then we'll look at it for the egress purposes, that pedestrian gate that's required. It wouldn't require a full review of the gate system. It would just be looking at that pedestrian gate or a safe dispersal area. And then at that point, it would be a permit for us just for the gate, and then the county would require it for the gate as well. We do want to collaborate with Amarok on the notification regarding any of the existing fences that are an issue, so we can come up with a collaborative solution on how they want to be notified of when their project requires additional things from the building owner. Response to the request. So fire prevention 27 is permitted by the California Fire Code. So changes in 2023 that they discussed, Metro Fire was enforcing changes of existing gates to be automated. However, we didn't address it in the standard, so we added it to the standard. And then again, after October of last year, with review of the totality of the project, we adjusted it to make it make sense for what the code is and what was required at the time. Existing gates and fences are reviewed during the plan review phase and may be subject to code enforcement or corrective actions as needed. Again, if it wasn't permitted, we'll follow through with the building owner for those items. And then a permit is required for the installation of electrified security fencing. And to address the other cities or county jurisdictions not permitting the same thing or not requiring it, right now, because of that assembly bill, a lot of them put everything on hold. And it's paused them. So with us being a special district, we had the advantage of maintaining what we already have. A lot of them are working with their council to determine how they can look at these items. And with that, again, I just want to mention that this is, for me, about firefighter safety and our crews being able to respond and safely de-energize these fences when they encounter them on an incident. And making sure that all of the required items are in place. Without us going out to do an inspection, there is no checks and balances to make sure those items were installed. So again, I want to make sure that our crews are safe and that we continue the process that we have. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay, thank you so much. Do you have any comments? Let's see, Director Rice over here.
Just, Chief Nygren, just a couple of questions on gates that were installed prior to 2001, and I know we didn't talk about grandfathering, but it sounded like if we were to relook at them, what we would look at the most would be egress to a safe and a public way.
Correct.
Have we had any of those that we've had to do, or have we had a request to look at them, or is that's what we do and we'll do it when it comes up?
As it comes up, we'll look at them individually to find out when that gate was installed, if we can determine it to be. Most of it is, if we really can't determine, we'll make that call that, okay, at least give us a pedestrian gate, and we'll make sure that Knox is included on any of the manual gates. So we're not requiring that upgrade to the existing fencing unless a permit was required.
I mean, one, it was interesting. It was interesting to listen to, I hope I have it right, Amarok and their presentation, and to listen and understand the issue and the problem. Secondarily, on a fire prevention aspect. But there's another aspect of this that is equally important, and I think we have to take it in mind, which kind of leans me towards the position of our fire marshal, and that is one that we don't think about. We've had a major change in law enforcement in this county, whether it could be a disturbed person that has access to a property, a disturbed person trying to get into a property. This access and egress is incredibly important to us because we don't know if we're going to get law enforcement back up to these. We don't know if it's going to be our crews that are going to be the only folks there. It isn't just a burglary and a theft issue. Violence throughout our society and in the public is at epidemic and horrible proportions. So I'm not inclined to, and I haven't heard anything that inclines me to lessen or lower a standard, because this is more than just fire safety and theft. This is a major life safety issue in a commercial property towards the employees that work there. So those were the kind of the questions that I had at the moment. I may have a couple more that pop up, but thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Director. Director Weber.
Thank you, Chief, and congratulations again. Do you know, if you know, what 12 volts does to a human body? Is it equivalent to a spark plug, electric fence? How much is 12 volts to me?
I think they spoke to that previously, and they may be able to bring it up. It's a decent jolt.
Okay.
That's
they're
not really a
speaking next.
technical term, but yeah.
They're
a jolt.
speaking, I wasn't at the last board meeting, maybe you covered it then. So, thank you. We'll follow up.
Director Gould.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm a little concerned that the slide presentation went down because I wanted to go back on one of those where you described the current status as you understand it within our division of what's going on with these fence challenges. It really nicely went through and it said, look, here's what we've got currently with one permit canceled, all those kind of things. And so it looks to me like you had 3 permits required, 9 permits having outstanding issues, so on and so forth. So it seems to me we have greater clarification of the issue at the moment. And then I heard you mention, so I appreciate that because that really then goes from 29 or whatever it was that we heard testimony on, but now it's down to here's what we know as being the issue, which is very helpful for us. You mentioned the fact that you've had collaboration with the organization and they've agreed to put additional warning on the electric fence when it's not de-energized and we're trying to come up to it.
Correct.
I think that's a significant plus. And I think it really does show they're willing to work with us to get you comfortable with the safety of our men and women, which I think is a really great sign. And it's wonderful that they're willing to put that additional piece on it. So I think that's collaboration evidence that we ought to take seriously because it looks like the consternations that maybe have been going on for a while are starting to mellow a bit, and we're starting to see that collaboration. And frankly, I think an improvement in the product because we won't be the only ones that'll be facing that fence potentially and not knowing whether it's energized. And I will just tell you, having touched a few 12 volts in my life, it's not the volts, it's the amps. Okay? The amps really hurt. The volts, not so much. Okay? So just think about that when we're talking about, I think a lot of people get freaked out about 12 volts. It is not that, it's the amps that'll send you crazy and your hair stand up and your fingers fall off. So thank you for that. I appreciate the presentation and clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Director Costa.
Thank you. So I have a couple questions. One of the slides, response to request, talks about changes to the standard that occurred in 2023. I just want to make sure I understood what changed. I think you mentioned the gates being automated. I just want to confirm that's...
So yeah, in 2023, what was happening is we were enforcing a change. If they were coming in with their electrified security fences, we required them to automate all gates as if it was new. And we were enforcing it, but we didn't have it written anywhere. So we ended up writing it into our standard, which is the one that was presented last time. And then again, after that collaboration and information in October, we did update that, but we do need to update the standard. And that's in a draft form right now, just waiting to see if there's anything from this meeting before we actually release it.
Okay, so there is this, the standard is being updated at this moment?
Correct.
Okay. And then in the process of updating the standard, do we work with, in this case, Sacramento County? How does that relationship, do we work with them?
No, because it's a local standard, so it just stays here.
Okay.
Yeah.
But do they require a permit then? I just want to make sure I understand. Do they require a permit on new construction when they're installing a gate?
So if it's a brand new gate that has to be installed, yes, they do. One for the egress pedestrian gate, and I believe a miscellaneous electrical permit if it's required to be an electrified, an automated gate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Director Rice.
Chief Nygren, off chance, do we know why the legislature exempted special districts in AB 2371? And if you don't know, that's okay. I just thought that was odd.
I don't know. I believe it was probably just an oversight on theirs, or they didn't recognize it, but it was not addressed specifically for special districts. Yep.
Director Clark?
Yeah, I'm curious about the alarm system, in addition to the knocks. Is it audible? I mean, how do you know? I mean, does a voice come on and say, the gate is electrified, or how do you?
Beacon of it, the beacon that we added, yes.
Okay.
So there's a beacon that's added for our crew protection. So the minute that gate is opened or moves, if the gate has not been de-energized, it will send the alarm. It's an audible visual device just right on the gate. It'll sound an alert for them to just recognize that something is there and they need to de-energize before they proceed.
Good enough, thank you.
Director Gould?
And that's in addition to now this new lighting alarm additional? You say that there's that box that does its twirly thing and says no touchy or whatever. You're saying there's an additional now collaboration that will add an additional visual
No, that's the same.
element?
It's the same. So you
It's
have
the
the
same
knocks
thing.
that'll de-energize it, and the minute that gate opens without de-energizing, it'll give an audible visual device.
But that's audible visual.
Yeah, it'll be like a beacon type situation. It'll sound it and
Got it. It's
yeah,
visual.
alert them, audible and visual. Yeah.
Nobody's come up with tactile like, because then you got it all covered. I mean,
all covered.
I don't know what you can do.
There's
Any
a
other
visual
questions?
on the fence. There's supposed to be a sign there.
I have one follow-up.
Director Costa?
So just to follow up to that, so when we arrive on scene, what do we do to make sure the fence is de-energized?
There's a knock switch.
So it's the
They
switch
open-
itself.
Yeah, they have to de-energize through the knock switch, which is different than a switch that's used for automation of the gate.
But then
So
we would
if-
have to exit the vehicle to do that?
In most circumstances, yes.
Okay.
So you have to get out. Yeah.
Okay, just confirming. Yeah.
Any other comments, questions for Fire Marshal Nygren? Thank you so much. Appreciate the time. It was a good presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will go ahead and take the public comment on this issue now. We will take council first.
I'm not sure who wants to go first. I have two cards, one from Nick Avis and the other from Keith Kaneko.
He says it's nothing. Guess is they have some kind of a breaker that as soon as.
Good evening. We've got a timer. You represent the client, so you
Yeah,
got a
I'm going
5-minute
to
limit?
let the Amarok representative hit on some of the technical questions that came up, and then I can speak after, so.
Okay. Yeah, we got 3 minutes on him and 5 for you.
We give him 5, and you can give me 2.
Okay.
John, that a problem?
That's what they want to do.
All right, that's fine.
I mean, they're entitled to, if speaking on behalf of a corporation or organization, 5 minutes each.
Oh, each, okay.
Yeah.
All right, then, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Director Wood.
Good day.
Thank you very much, board members. Appreciate the time once again. Good to see you again. Certainly want to just get straight to the point. A number of good questions were raised by many of you, and certainly want to provide some additional clarity in addition to what Ms. Nygren had presented to you. So first and foremost, let's just touch on safety. There was kind of a question, I think, one of the members wasn't present in the last meeting, so the question about safety. The system is absolutely medically safe. So first, top to bottom, it's governed by international, national, as well as state safety standards. The parent safety standard is International Electrotechnical Commission Standard 60335-2-76. It's specifically for this technology, electrified security fencing. And this technology, practically speaking, it's a great deterrent, but it does not cause injury. Okay, someone had mentioned, spark plug. It's akin to, get your attention. Pop, ooh, don't want to do that again. Doesn't burn you, doesn't drop you to the ground. It is purely just a deterrent, and it's effective basically like, touching a doorknob and you get a static shock, and that same kind of reaction, you pull back. That's the deterrent element. But along with that are yellow warning signs, which truthfully probably do most of the job in terms of its deterrent element, preventing criminals from actually thinking about trying to enter a property. I did want to address one specific comment made by Director Rice, or question. Certainly, kind of societal issues and problems we're having with trespass, not maybe always with criminal intent, but understand this technology is to keep people unwarranted, unauthorized people off of properties, whether they're criminals or not, mental, status or issue might be compromised. But again, this deters people from actually getting into a property. This technology is effectively a fence behind a fence. It's not the perimeter barrier, it actually resides on the interior of the fence per your own standard, per state law, and it's a requirement that it be on the interior and behind a non-electrified perimeter barrier. But again, yellow warning signage, but again, the intention is to make sure that people don't get on the property. So therefore, law enforcement, as well as fire, do not have to respond to unauthorized people on properties doing nefarious things or potentially, just dwelling on the property. Okay, mention about permits. I know the number 29 keeps coming up. Just to be clear, there's not 29 applications pending with staff. Okay, I think upwards of about 10 or 11 that currently we're residing with staff for upwards of 2 years. The others came in literally somewhere around state law being passed, which is September of 2024. And at that point, state law was very clear that no permits were required other than a security alarm system permit to install this technology. So therefore, there were no applications presented to staff as well as even the county. State law is very explicit with regard to its application. And certainly, again, it clarified the point that this was a streamlined permitting act to ensure that the technology could be implemented quickly by businesses who definitely needed the technology. Let's see, NOx deactivation. Just want to clarify just practical understanding of how it works. Ms. Nygren explained kind of the basics of how it would occur in the instance of fire personnel rolling up to a gate. Understand that she'd mentioned the NOx device requires a physical key, which obviously you have the master key, can go in and deactivate the system prior to entry. That still requires a firefighter personnel to get out of the truck to deactivate the system. Similar to like any other NOx device, whether it be a NOx box, to get through a manual gate, physical body has to get out of the truck to actually open the gate. So regardless of whether there's a click to enter, someone has to get out of the gate to deactivate the system or whatever the case may be. So I just wanted to make that clarification. Okay, so really, I just want to make clear, well, first, there's one thing I want to address. Ms. Nygren mentioned that there was a couple permits approved over this past week. May 6th, we did receive email notification for conditioned approvals. It happened to be for a couple of luxury car dealerships here in the district. However, the conditions that were required are still what I had mentioned previously in the presentation. Requirement for manual gates to be upgraded to click to enter, again, at a cost of $25,000 to $30,000 per gate. Some of these sites, including the luxury car dealership, has multiple gates. A building permit is required also as a condition on the red card permit approval. Building permits are no longer required, and to comport with state law, it doesn't align. We can't get a permit from the county because state law explicitly exempts the county or exempts a business from having to get a building permit for this technology. So there are conflicts built into the conditioned approvals issued by staff, and that's where, truthfully, I just ask for a constructive, collaborative discussion to kind of figure this out, because there's obviously a misunderstanding with respect to state law. You are intermeshed with county regulations. Your own FPS 27 references a county standard, but yet state law preempts counties. So, I mean, we got to sit down and figure this out. The reality is, my final comment is there's dozens of businesses waiting with it for this security technology, and they're getting very frustrated dealing with crime, knowing that this issue kind of just keeps going on and on and on. So certainly request your leadership and direction, and certainly look forward to progress here very shortly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Before each witness leaves, if we have specific questions about their comments, can we ask them now? Or would you prefer that we let the second?
Let's let them both
testimony
go.
occur?
That way
Okay.
we might get some answers.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have a lot more to add. I just want to add some perspective on the big picture. Obviously, I was pleased to hear in the presentation, I didn't see it when I read it in advance, but hearing Chief Nygren say FPS 27 is being revisited, that's the first time I've heard that. I mean, we certainly would encourage additional collaboration on that end. It's clear that this is a major burden with, acknowledging we certainly don't want to put fire personnel at risk, but we also have to have the perspective here, as we've mentioned, as Keith mentioned, you physically have to get out and deactivate the unit. The additional requirement for click to enter is excessive at that point, and I don't really think it's a safety issue at that point. It feels like, to me, a convenience issue, which is understandable, but let's discuss that. Is the burden commensurate with the benefit in this case? And I think it's clearly no. But certainly welcome more discussion, and we do want more collaboration. We absolutely want to be at the table. We want to work with the district. It's a large district. There's a lot of property owners facing property security related issues that really need this very effective tool that's being used around the country. And in fact, in the city of Sacramento, even before the 835, the law was passed, didn't require click to enter gates. So to be clear, it wasn't required prior to that point either. So I just want to be clear about the perspective here and would ask that, obviously we work together to work out a workable solution here. Our position is that special districts were included in the intent of that law. Clearly there's a differing of opinion. It certainly doesn't seem to make sense as to why cities and counties that have fire services wouldn't be subject to additional requirements. Permits wouldn't be subject to additional requirements, but special districts that provide the same exact services to a city or a county that they somehow could keep regulating in this space. So in any event, appreciate the time this evening, and thank you for allowing us to speak and providing our perspective.
Director Gould, you have a comment.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. So really quickly, is it true that there has to be a fence that has no trespassing, whatever the fence looks like, that's a requirement before you can install an electric fence, an electrified fence? So is it true, besides those that are responding as first responders or law enforcement, anyone who penetrates that fence by definition is trespassing?
That is correct.
Okay, so right away, unless you're authorized to be on that space for whatever first responder criteria, anyone else that's penetrated the first fence by definition is trespassing, which last I heard was a crime. So they're criminals trying to touch an electrified fence, and we're doing everything we can to ensure safety of the first responder, as well as understanding that you're trespassing to touch that electrified fence, right? Short of your employees coming out the other way, I would say that has to be clarified. You've already committed a crime by going past the first gate obstruction. The second part of this, I think we have to be honest that the fact that the special districts were not listed in the law is nothing we can hide behind. I agree with the idea that if we say counties and cities have got to do it, come on. Somebody just didn't put it in the language because we don't typically come into that realm of people writing legislation unless it directly affects us. And if we did do some legislation and kept us out of that, I'd like to know why. Because I think it's an honest idea that if you're doing it in the city and you're doing it in the county, when we're in the county, that those kinds of things we ought to agree to. And I would hope that, and I'm confident that our fire marshal will do everything in her power to make this issue resolved as quick as we can. We rarely have these kinds of conflicts that linger on as long as it sounds like this one's been going on, even with changes. So I hope that our fire marshal and our team here take this seriously, get this moving forward. Think if you owned a property that had, I think you used an example of a luxury auto dealership, and those were at risk for being stolen every night in our community. I would be hyper-focused on ensuring that we got whatever safe fencing would be allowed. I'd want it up as a member of the community because I'm losing revenue every time one of those suckers drives off with somebody who hasn't paid. And so I hope that we can, as a group, move through this really quickly, get this off our table. We've got some really big things as an organization. I don't know, $400 million to spend in 10 years. Let's get this one behind us, move on to stuff that's gonna, as long as our firefighters are taken care of and they're safe, which it sounds like everybody's working to ensure, let's get this gate fiasco or gate out of our hair, frankly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Director Rice, then Director Clark.
Just a couple of things. Having been a captain for 16 years, click to enter or the ability to open a gate from the cab is not a convenience. It's a safety issue. And if you have a property that has an electrified inner fence, the last thing the captain wants to do is either send his firefighter or himself out, especially in the event of a fire. We're thinking about what's on the property, who's on the property, what's burning, where it's burning. So that's a little bit offensive to characterize that it is just a convenience. It's not. And I was going to do this privately, but I'm not. Miss Nygren is Fire Marshal Nygren or Chief Nygren. Do we understand? Thank you.
Director Clark?
Yeah, it seems to me like from one of the demos that the main issue right now is not somebody getting in and stealing cars. It's people cutting through your fences, like a lot of homeless and a lot of the places that are being violated, if you will. Isn't that what it is mostly? It's people cutting through the fence and getting in and not people getting in there and stealing cars or anything like that?
It's a variety, but certainly most of the time it's criminal intent.
Yeah, but I'm saying from the examples that I've seen, it's like, in areas that, for example, that have been demonstrated to me as being in areas where you got a lot of homeless people and they're cutting through the fence, and that's the examples. That I've seen.
It's not necessarily just
Okay, but
individuals because there's organized crime.
okay,
Catalytic converter
yeah, but
theft
I'm saying is it the prevalence is mostly, I'm not excusing the fact that the place is being penetrated to begin with, but I'm saying most of the examples that I've seen in our jurisdiction has been people the homeless guys and
It's a variety. It's
Okay.
not just homeless.
So you've had a bunch of examples of people breaking in and walking off, driving off with some of your cars.
Video footage of a group of 10 individuals with 2 vehicles and sawzall cutters. That's a coordinated effort. That's
Okay, no, I
organized
know,
crime.
yeah.
So it spans the spectrum. This helps prevent the whole wide spectrum
Okay,
of
I just
criminal
wanted
trespass.
to make sure that I have an understanding of really what the situation is and the gravity of it.
Yeah, it spans a wide range of industries.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Any other questions or comments? No? Oh, Director Costa.
Sorry, just really quick, because I believe this is just to receive the presentation, but I just want to confirm, Chief Nygren, you mentioned that we're updating the policy currently. So there's still opportunity for these organizations and the community at large to provide more comment?
Yeah, we'll work collaboratively with Amarok to make sure that it's clear what we're looking for, and it's the existing fence. We're going to take out that whole first section that talks about an automatic upgrade to the click to enter feature that was on there.
Perfect. Thank you for all that you're doing to work with the community at large. Yeah.
Any other comments, questions? All right, I want to thank everyone for their time and their energy on this, and look forward to getting this thing resolved. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move on to our next presentation item. Chief Financial Officer O'Toole going to tell us about Measure O.
Before we do that, we do have Director Jones on that would like to join us.
Welcome, Director Jones.
Let's see. He's trying to promote her to.
She needs to accept it, so
Yep.
promote people?
Yes, thank you very much, Marty. Thank you, Art. I've been here since just from almost from the beginning of Fire Marshal Nygren's presentation, And I want to say thank you to her for all the research and study.
Want to participate remotely in this meeting? For the rest of the meeting?
Yes, I've been here since 6:03, I believe, but it didn't between the phone and the iPad. Just want to make sure that you know me. Can you hear me?
Yes, and what is, we need to know the reason that you want to participate remotely?
I'm very ill.
Yes. Do we need to take roll motion and roll that?
She did not sound like that yesterday.
Okay, well, she doesn't want to use her 2 times, she wants to use medical. Yep, so we need a motion and a second
I
to
make the
allow that.
motion, we allow Director Jones to be sick.
Who seconded it? Stark?
Director
Okay.
Clark over here.
Okay,
Into this state.
You can get the roll, please.
yes, Director Gould,
Absolutely.
Director Stark. Director Clark. Director Rice. Director Weber. Director Costa.
Aye.
Director Wood.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. And just for those that are paying attention and confused by what happened, it's just a unique little issue with state law that we have to comply with under the Brown Act to make sure we follow those rules appropriately. So welcome, Director Jones. We'll move on. Measure O presentation. Dave O'Toole, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members, Fire Chief House, colleagues, members of the public. This is one of those $400 million over 10-year items. For this presentation, we'll be hearing from our municipal advisor on the options for structuring Measure O debt. And Bobby Chung will present 4 financing options. This will be a Zoom presentation. And those 4 options help us consider the structure of the bonds. In 2 weeks, Bobby from KNN Public Finance will be here to present the actual financing plan, which will include one of the 4 options, laying out the costs to the district and the constituents and this organization, and how that will contribute towards the capital infrastructure needs identified in the bond. To quickly recap where we are on the financing of Measure O, just to recall, you've had a number of presentations on the projects in Measure O by the Planning and Development Team. Planning and Development Team is also part of the financing team, and that's what we're looking at tonight is the financing. So we've hired a municipal advisor, KNN Public Finance, as I mentioned. We've hired a bond and disclosure counsel, Stradling, which you approved as well. And with those folks on our planning and development team, myself and Ron Empedrad, your controller, we form your Measure O financing team. And we've been meeting to look to develop bond documents and preliminary statements to parties that are interested in buying the bonds and preparing for a presentation to rating agencies, to get a rating agency that will be presented when we go out to the public, go out to the buyers. Let's see. Our next big tasks then are to bring you the financing plan, as I said, that's in about 2 weeks. And soon after that, the financing team will meet with the rating agencies to get that rating pretty much, probably later at the end of this month. And then we expect to issue bonds in early July. So with that overview, I think I gave Bobby enough time to turn it over to him for the presentation on the options and introduce himself and the firm.
Thank you. Can folks hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that introduction. Bobby Chung from KNN Public Finance. Good evening, President and members of the board. I'm very happy to speak before your board this evening. This is the first time since KNN was hired by the district through the recent RFP process. I have about 7 or 8 slides to walk through, but feel free to stop me at any time with any questions. With that, I will go ahead and share my screen with my slides. Okay, there we go. All right. Just a quick note on our role as the district's municipal advisor. We are tasked with providing you with independent advice as you move through the bonding process. And very importantly, critically, we have a fiduciary responsibility to put your interests ahead of our own. And as Mr. O'Toole just mentioned, over the past few months, we've been working with your staff on a number of activities, including assisting with building out your professional team. We've worked to review various drafts of legal and disclosure documents, and we've done some analysis on the actual structure of your Measure O bond program, And that is what I'm here to talk a little bit more about this evening. On this next slide, I've listed out a couple of the key factors that go into the structuring considerations when looking at how to think about your bond program. A quick reminder, right, the source of the repayment for general obligation bonds is the property tax that is levied on the district's residents. And so we look at a variety of factors. Some of the key concepts I've listed here: the tax rate, which is expressed as $1 per 100,000 of assessed value, assumption for growth in assessed value, the number of bond transactions issued over time, the types of bonds we're issuing, the debt structure, level debt structure, ascending debt structure, or other. And I'll go through some of those options on subsequent slides. The repayment term of the bonds, 20, 25, 30 years, the optional call provisions, and of course the interest rates. Critically, the bonds that the district will be issuing will be tax exempt, meaning that the investor who will be lending you money will not have to pay income tax on their interest income. So they lend you money at a more favorable rate than, let's say, a corporation would be able to borrow at. And that's kind of a key assumption that we have here. So this next slide, summary of GeoBond scenarios, has a lot of numbers on it. We summarize the results of the analysis here, and each of the pages beyond this will have various charts and graphs that will show you kind of visually which, what each one of these debt structures and debt options look like. But basically, for each scenario, and we have 4 options for you. We've assumed that the 415 million will be issued across 3 separate bond issuances separated by 3 years each. So over the course of approximately 9 or 10 years, the entire 415 will be issued, commencing with this first issuance of approximately $150 million. And here on the page, we summarize our estimates for the debt service for each transaction, the aggregate annual debt service across all 3 transactions, and the tax rate estimates both for both for the first year, the last year, the maximum, and the average. And of course, we generated these options based upon what the voting populace voted for in your ballot language, which was basically $19 per 100,000 of AV and $24 million generated annually per year. So we try to live under those general guidelines when coming up with these 4 scenarios. Okay, option number 1. What we're showing here on the left is a chart of the debt service in millions over time for all 3 of the individual bond issuances I mentioned on the previous page. So the orange bars are the debt service associated with this first bond transaction, the 2025 issuance. The Series B is the next transaction, and the Series C is the final transaction. And as you can see here, the sum of all 3 of these is structured to achieve an overall level debt service payment over time. And this has the impact of having a declining average tax rate over the amortization period of this structure, because we assume that your underlying assessed value will grow over the course of the next 30 to 40 years. I think we've used a fairly conservative growth assumption of 2% per year. Your actual performance, your actual growth rate over the recent past has been higher than that. So if AV grows faster than 2% per year, the average tax rate will be even lower than what we're showing in this scenario. The second option here attempts to build in a bit of a ramp throughout the 3 bond issuances with the goal of trying to keep the tax rate fairly level for a period of time. Now, given some of the parameters and restrictions that we have to work with, the reality is we can only build in a certain number of years of ramp. But the goal here is to try and keep the tax rate fairly level for some period of time before the tax rate descends as the bonds amortize for the rest of the term. Option 3 layers on 3 bond transactions with independently leveled debt service payments. So here you see Series A at about $10 million, Series B level debt service for the second issuance, and Series C on top of that. And this has the effect of ramping into your maximum tax rate over time as the district issues each series of bonds. So as you can see here on the right, the tax rate jumps from $10 to 20 to 25 before declining over time and very rapidly declining at the end when the first bond and the second bond transactions fully pay off. And finally, option 4, this scenario is a level principal scenario for each bond issuances here. And much like a home mortgage, if we were to structure a level debt service, structure like we do in option 3, we would be paying more interest upfront and less principal, and on the back end, more principal and less interest. But here in option 4, we've structured a level principal amortization for each one of the 3 issuances, which really has the effect of having a declining total debt service structure over time. So similar to scenario 3, the tax rate here jumps up. It actually jumps up to a higher point, but declines even more rapidly as opposed to option number 3. So yeah, I would say as Mr. O'Toole said, we are planning to come back to your board in a couple weeks with the final bond structure and the financing resolution and drafts of documents for your approval. We will be meeting with the rating agencies after that, and we plan on setting the interest rates and pricing the bonds in mid-June and closing in early July. So with that, let me stop there and see if there are any questions.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Chung?
A lot.
Okay.
No, I think I'm looking forward to the next presentation where we'll really get more explanation out of the 4 samples. It does bring back memories of the pension obligation bond that we let 20 years ago, and some of the things that I was listening for, and just because I'm curious, are we coming into a time that could be favorable for releasing bonds, or are we going to have to be cautionary as we go along, or are we stable, or are we a little bit on rocky ground? And it's a curiosity, and Bobby, I'm not holding you to it. I don't know what I don't know.
That's a very good question, Director. I would say about 6 weeks ago, the markets experienced a period of significant volatility. The bond market specifically, not the last time we saw that level of volatility was in early 2020 when COVID hit. I would say just within the last 2 to 3 weeks, there has been stability that's returned to the market, the bond market, and we are seeing transactions price fairly efficiently. I'll get into this a little bit more for my, in 2 weeks, but we are planning on selling these bonds via a competitive sale in the bond market. And just recently, we saw several competitive sales that generated quite a bit of interest from the purchasing community. So I think, we have our eyes and ears open, and I think, if you were to sell bonds next week, I think that would go fairly well. But we'll see how the market is when we're ready.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Chung? Director Stark.
Being the newest board member, I'm not as familiar with these types of sales. It appears that you're offering us 4 options. Is staff going to come back at that time in the next report and make a recommendation as which of the 4 to use?
Yeah, there will be a recommended option
Okay,
in 2 weeks.
thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Mr. Chung, thank you so much for your time. I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. O'Toole.
Sure. I guess I would just close with, I think on one of the slides, there was some around 9 factors to consider, and I know that can kind of be difficult to figure out how to weight. I just wanted to share, for me, kind of the 2 that rose to the top were overall cost, and then the second was the start, we call it the initial rate per 100,000. The first 2 were around 24, 25, and the second 2 were around 10 or 12, and then they jumped up more quickly. So considering, from the taxpayer's perspective, how quickly would you want to assess them, and at what rate? So those are just 2 factors I think kind of jumped out for me. I know there's several more. And with that, it closes my remarks.
Okay. Any other comments or questions for Mr. O'Toole? Thank you so much. Appreciate the time and the thoughtfulness that went into this. Last presentation item is with Deputy Chief Mitchell and staff, but it looks like we have Chief Radnicki. So welcome, Behavioral Health Report.
Good evening, President Wood, directors, Chief House, colleagues, members of the public. John Radnicki, Assistant Chief, C-Shift Commander. And Chief Mitchell couldn't make it tonight, not feeling well, and so he apologizes. But this presentation is one in a response to your request and this ongoing discussion we've been having about behavioral health and how we're responding to that. With me tonight, Chief Daly and Chief Keeley. The 3 of us are going to discuss the presentation and answer any questions you may have. And the first thing I'd just like to lead in with is Chief Daly being here. We appreciate the presence and the excitement and the engagement and the conversations we've had at the last couple of board meetings. And a response to that is we recognized the dynamics of this situation and the need for a singular point of contact who has the skill set and ability to engage in all the conversations. And Chief Daly is that person for us. So effective at the end of April 21st, Chief Daly was appointed to take the lead role. And so the 3 of us are working collaboratively together. But again, to ensure that we don't miss meetings, information, and we can get as much detail as possible. Chief Daly's taken that point, and we're excited to have him. So with that, I'm gonna hand it over to him, and he's gonna lead the discussion.
Good evening, President, Directors, Chief. Thanks again for having me. This presentation was put together again on your request. So I'm going to go through it, hitting all the bullet points that were specifically asked for, and then I'll open it up and we can have a conversation afterwards if you have follow-up questions. So, as an update, again, these are the items that were asked for, and we'll go through them one by one here. So, the timeline of this really started, though it states February 5th, 2025. That's when Sheriff went public and said that they were no longer going to respond to calls that didn't involve some sort of criminal element. This, of course, comes in response to a Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals case, Scott versus Smith in 2024, who ruled that in that case, the officers were not entitled to their qualified immunity, namely because Scott was mentally ill and had not committed a crime and therefore did not pose a direct threat to officers. Again, February 5th is really when this news conference happened, but we were noticed on January 8th that this was the direction the sheriff was going to go to. We were given very little notice before that, and so in the time between then and now, we've really been scrambling to come up with our own internal response to that and how we're going to deal with that out in the field. We've been working on that quite diligently, and during that time, I've fielded several questions regarding the immunity. Again, remember the sheriff's decision was based on their the threat of them losing their qualified immunity in those types of cases. And I've been asked, could our immunity on the fire side be also at jeopardy in that? And, you know, a lot of legal experts think that that could be a possibility, but when that really applies is when firefighters are doing what is considered to be discretionary functions. So those are things that are outside of our regular, typical operations. So in this case, specifically, it would be like restraining a patient or entering a home when they're without cause, if we were to do that. But any circumstance where a person's clearly established constitutional rights have not been violated. In that case, it's very black and white, but it is something that I think for legal purposes and liability, we need to consider when we're looking at what our future plans are in our response. So again, some legal experts think that there is a possibility that firefighters could be viewed and treated similarly in courts as police officers, should we be put into that similar situation. So since then, we've as you know, this is very multifaceted. We've engaged in a lot of different areas in the community. Obviously, we've done a tremendous amount of work. In fact, the bulk of the work has really been between the dispatch centers and the LEMSA. Number one, the dispatch centers, because that's where we're really looking at how can we make the biggest impact to safety for our crews right now. And the LEMSA, because they have provided us some tools to help keep us safer on the liability end afterwards and documentation line. We can speak to more of that down the road. But they have been very helpful in supporting us and basically backing our position should we decide that we cannot approach a person given the circumstances. So also, we've been meeting with regional police dispatchers because a lot of this involves them. And then, of course, on the region, the regional EMS chiefs and regional ops chiefs all have to weigh in on this because some of the PSAPs, the main dispatch centers, affect all of them, or at least transfer some of these calls around. So, again, a lot of meetings. Over 3 months, we've had numerous people attending those meetings, and that really was not beneficial in having the consistency that we need to have one person be that point of contact and be present. I would be remiss to not thank Chiefs Rudnicki and Keeley for their work in doing this. Right now, to date, the best progress that I think we've made in supporting our members has been at the getting some of those supporting documents from the LEMSA, who recognize that we're in somewhat of a precarious position and they want to support us as well. So, from our current operations, the biggest operational change we have is that we changed our squad's capability in responding to any sort of behavioral health response call. One of the memos that we got from the county specifically states that an EMS supervisor needs to be consulted if they're dealing with one of these situations. And in our case, that would constitute being a fire captain or above. So we have changed our operations to only send fire engines that would have a captain on board versus a squad who's typically operated with 2 firefighters. We have asked the captains to start performing a risk assessment en route to the call, and that's a big change of operation for us so far. Oftentimes on the law enforcement side, when they are dispatched to a call, they often take some time to sit there and go through the call records. They look up people that are involved in the call, sometimes to make phone calls into a resident to gather more information and situational awareness before they get there. And that historically has been something completely foreign to the fire department. That's something that we learn through these meetings with the dispatch centers, and that it's just a different operation that we do because we have different missions. So again, that's a new task that we're asking captains to go through, and obviously they're concerned with that and have some safety concerns about their level of training and what tools we're providing them. So we recognize that. We hear not only your concerns, but more importantly to me, the concerns from the line and getting them those tools that they really need today to do that that job better. So with all that said, we're currently, I'll get to what we're currently working on here in just a second. I'm going to share just a little bit of data to put it all in perspective, because we do talk about this a lot. This is at the forefront of almost every conversation here in the district right now. But from February 6th, which is when we really started collecting the data based on the change that the sheriff came out with on February 5th, until April 30th, you can see we had a total of 689 calls that were mental health related. So that really equals about 3% of our total calls. It's very small. But of course, it only takes one with a bad outcome for it to become a very big concern for us. So if it's predictable, it's preventable. And right now we can see where we have some issues, and we're focusing on that. Of this number, you can see we have a number of calls where the sheriff was, or law enforcement, let me say law enforcement was requested, and 61.5% of the time, they did not respond to the call, based on their new standard that if there was not a crime committed, then they are not going to respond to it. The data we don't have, yes, Director?
I'm gonna forget.
It's okay.
At some point, will you be able to drill down to that 61% of the calls that they did not respond to? What was the outcome, and what was the situation for our crews when they got there? And I ask only because I would have forgotten.
Yeah, yes, sir. This is, I'm here for you, so please feel free. And that was exactly the point I was about to make, is that unfortunately, at the time that this started, our system was not built to be able to mine that deep into this information. So we are addressing that as we speak. And our goal is to not only be able to tell you what that outcome was, but to be able to tell you what the call originated as, because as you often know, we sometimes get dispatched to a person with a decreased level of consciousness, and then we show up and it's actually a behavioral health. So those type calls may fall through the data. And to be fair to all agencies involved here, we don't have the ability to factor in how many times Citrus Heights Police Department did or did not respond versus Sacramento Sheriff or, the other law enforcement agencies. So we are building that into our system so we can capture that data, and we can have that for you the next time we make a presentation. But I think that that's vitally important to have, again, for fairness, but also to help us focus our efforts where they need to be focused the most. So.
Chief, I have a quick question.
Sir.
The 115 where they did not respond, that's out of the 187, not out of the 689, correct?
Correct. And keep in mind that some of these calls would not have, the 187 is where they were requested, meaning we had some sort of information that indicated that there could be some hostility or weapons or you name it.
Specifically, thanks for answering that. I just wanted to make sure we understand that the 115 come out of the 187.
Yes.
The other question is, who makes the decision for the 187?
Of
I'm
who
assuming
goes?
that dispatch gets the 689. Through that pathway, somebody in that, before it even gets dispatched to our crews, somebody makes a decision to go the 187.
Yes, great question. And that comes it's not an easy answer, actually. So from as I understand it, some of the pro-QA questions, that system that the dispatchers use in basically triaging the call, at the result of some of those protocols, it'll flag it and recommend that we ask law enforcement to assist. And at other times, it doesn't. And so it gets sent out and dispatched like any other medical aid. If, while the call taker is on the phone, they say anything additional and dispatch updates that and sends that to the crew, then the captain, in most cases, would then ask dispatch to request law enforcement.
So out of the 187, do we have that split yet? Do we know
Out
how
of the
many came
187,
directly from the
115
PSAP? No. My question is, of the 187, do we know how many of those were requested by our software program? How many were requested by our
sir, but-
captains? We're gathering that quickly, because we may have a challenge in our dispatch cards where it hasn't matured enough, because this is a new dynamic. That it hasn't matured enough to default. I would hope that it constantly defaults to a higher level. And
So
I'm
we
not
are-
comfortable having a flip card be the one that makes that decision. I would love to see us move to where, of that 187, we've got a huge number that are done by the captains, because that's a human who's got decades of experience who may sense something that there's not a chance a card can. And so I would just hope that we're really dialing down on this, because frankly, this is becoming, I know you guys are working your butts off, but every call we go on where we don't have this dialed in.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think there is a training component on our side as well. And it's a change in culture.
Yeah.
I don't have to tell any of you, as you know, but maybe for everybody that's out there in the world, like from day one of EMT school, our very most basic class that we take as firefighter, EMTs, paramedics, they teach us, is the scene safe? If you don't say those words when you walk in for your first scenario, you fail and you're done. And so it's ingrained in us from day one that we rely on law enforcement to show up there and make that scene safe, even if it's just their presence there. So obviously with the change in their policy, that has forced a cultural shift from us. So where we're just typically used to the cops being there automatically, now they're not. And so that takes some time, I think, culturally for our crews to get used to being there without them. And obviously, you know, there's emotion involved when we're just told no, because we're not used to that. Typically we request them. In the past, they would show up. And now there's a decision-making process on their side that factors in there. So that leads me in, if I could, to our next point of where we're going. So first and foremost, one of our objectives here is to establish that tolerance of risk in certain types of calls. And so we've already drafted a matrix where we are still determining where that best fits into the system, but that matrix is designed to categorize calls into a low, medium, or high risk category. Its basic form, it's a handful of questions that are already asked in some form through our ProQA questioning on the fire dispatch side or through the questioning on the law enforcement side. From each of those responses, they would receive a number, and if the number reaches a certain point, it would be flagged as either moderate or high risk. And my intent would be that if it reached a moderate, then our crews would get a pre-alert for that response, meaning something that pre-alert them on the scene safety, that would indicate that they should slow their roll and start gathering some additional situational awareness to make a good decision of whether they should proceed into the call or not. My intent would be that if that call hits the high risk level, that we do not dispatch them, first of all, and ideally, I would love it if those calls never even made it to our dispatch center. But I'm just one person, and as you can imagine, that takes quite a bit to massage that into all the agencies in the region. So I stand here tonight and assure you, though, that I have heard your concerns and the concerns of the line and our executive staff, and that we're working on that. It just is going to take a little bit of time. But in that time, we've already drafted some policies. We've got an internal policy that would support that. Again, it hinges on that matrix. And in addition to that, we're looking at ways that we can provide training to our crews here on the fire side, which would maybe include de-escalation training, basic overall scene safety training for them, things that are typically outside of the norm for our line firefighter, paramedics, EMTs, but in this case, if they're responding without law enforcement, may increase their safety altogether. Of course, there would be some other cultural changes that would have to occur along with that. But we can't do any of this until we're certain that we are also protecting the district from liability in that. And so there is a number of legal aspects that we also need to analyze, and we want to make sure that we don't do this just on a whim. So as far as long-term solutions, we have a number of those that we are also looking at. Should I let you talk on those on the tele thing? I'm going to let Chief Rudnicki talk a little bit on some of our longer-term solutions that we're looking at. But some of the current challenges that we have right now are, in some circumstances, as you know, there are just calls that we cannot provide service without law enforcement backup. We just can't do it due to the safety concerns of our personnel. One of the major factors and why this is pivotal and so polarizing for Metro Fire is that Sacramento County itself does not have a crisis intervention team. Many of our allied agencies around us in the region do have law enforcement that still will respond to these types of calls in some variation. But if they don't, they do have crisis intervention teams, which is another resource that they can defer this call to. And on our side, where we run into the problem is that as it comes through our dispatch, it basically hits a dead end, and the only option is to either send us or hang up on the caller. And you know, as our primary concern is to provide the best service we can to the public, we can't risk the chance that somebody that does need our help and should receive our help doesn't get it based on the fact that we don't have a clear, consistent policy and a method for us to actually determine whether it's safe or not for us to respond. So at this point, I can't comment on whether the Sheriff's Department would be interested in having the conversation about having a crisis intervention team or providing services for that. I personally feel that one of those teams does need a law enforcement trained person to be with them, but it is something that we're exploring on our side too. I don't have the answers for that yet. Obviously, this multifaceted problem extends far beyond Sac Metro Fire and Sacramento Sheriff's Department. It is, and it's probably far beyond our region, to be honest. But our mission here is to make, number one, again, provide the best service we can to our public and keep our membership as safe as we possibly can.
Chief, can I, Mr. President?
Yeah, go ahead.
Chief, on this last, go back, whoever's running this thing, if you could go back, because I think there may be a bit, and I think it's important for the public to understand, our members do have training related to mental health emergencies. It's part of the core curriculum of our EMS staff. What you may be saying is that it's not adequate given the new dynamic, right?
Correct.
Because as you mentioned in your statement, that from day one of EMT schooling, we teach you scene safety, and an element of that is being aware of some of the psychological emergencies that could present themselves. So in reality, we do have training for all of our staff. And I don't want the community to understand, you know, our people are clueless. That's not the case at all. They have some real training on how to manage this, but it was also with the understanding, and probably at the beginning, that you would have somebody backing you up if things went cray-cray. And that's not what we're in right now. And so we need additional training to handle this new dynamic, but I just don't want the community to think, well, these guys and gals don't have a freaking clue. They do, and they run hundreds of calls a year with people suffering from mental health. Not every one of those is violent. Not every one of them, as the stats show, even require a police presence. So we do have it. We just have a new dynamic that causes us to have some additional training on how to handle those that end up being violent. We have no backup, and our men and women are at risk. So I just wanted, because that's a pretty bold statement to say, we don't have any training. Well, we do. It's just not where it needs to be given this new change.
Well said, Director. Thank you.
Director Stark has a question.
Regarding the crisis interventions teams, who has them? What are they composed of? And can we develop that here?
Yeah, so as far as I know, and I could be wrong, but Sacramento City does have one. Do you remember what they call them? This, I don't know. Yes, it's called their SORT team. From what I understand, it is composed of a mental health professional, counselor, and a law enforcement officer. Almost all of the surrounding agencies, Elk Grove, Citrus Heights, and Folsom, also have similar teams like that. So again, it provides another resource for them to divert the call to once they know that it is a mental health related incident. And yeah.
I can expand a little bit on that. And that's ultimately what the challenge is, that law enforcement component. And so what we've explored recently is there are, through the county, there are mental health clinicians available that were partnered up with sheriff officers. And when that was turned off in the county, you know, we always like to find solutions, and we put our heads together and we thought, well, what if we can take one of those clinicians and partner them and fold them into the mobile integrated health program? It seemed like a nice segue, and mobile integrated health has worked and used those resources in the past. And the idea was potentially to have a driver for them, so essentially a paramedic or an EMT or somebody with a badge to be with them to get them from point A to point B. it would work, but the problem is you still don't have the force protection. There's still a scene safety component. And then the other challenge with it, as we explored further, is there's a significant cost to Metro Fire to stand up one of those units for the vehicle and the extra personnel. And that's something we've had conversations with the county with, and there aren't financial resources to support us in that. Even if we had that in place, we still need that law enforcement component to ensure it's safe before we get to that patient.
Got it, thank you.
All right.
Can I answer any other questions for you?
I thank you so much for the presentation and the time put into this. I know it was kind of dumped on you 2 weeks ago, and appreciate the time and energy you guys have done so quickly to get us this information. I have a question before I turn it over to my fellow directors is, what are we doing, if anything, with respect to going after some sort of legislation to address and respond to the Scott case? Are we not using our contacts in the legislature to jump in? This is something they could come in and make a response to right now.
I don't have any intel in that. We've asked Kyle to look into that in the future, or now. I think it's a work in progress.
Okay.
Is my immediate answer to that.
And I would just add to that, when you're talking about qualified immunity, that's a concept under federal law. So if there's an injury to a patient or someone in the field, there's claims under state law, there's claims under federal law. Under state law, there's certain immunities for emergency responses that basically immunizes our staff in those situations unless they act with gross negligence or willful misconduct, things like that. The federal side of it is when there's potentially a violation of someone's civil rights, and that's when the qualified immunity kicks into place. I can tell you it applies to it applies to public employees who are acting under color of law in the course and scope of their employment. So it doesn't necessarily matter whether the person's a fireman or a policeman in determining whether that immunity applies. And that's been a discussion at the national level for some period of time as to should that qualified immunity be strengthened, because the courts have pretty much, in many cases, have watered it down to the point where it isn't a qualified immunity anymore. It's just, and without getting too deep into the legal weeds here, basically the immunity applies if the officer or the public employee is acting in good faith and wouldn't know that their conduct would violate someone's federally protected constitutional rights. It's determined on a case-by-case basis. And so it's very easy for a court looking at it to say, well, wait, there's a question here as to whether or not a reasonable cop or a reasonable fireman or a reasonable paramedic or a reasonable social worker would know that their conduct violates a federal civil right or not. And that's how those cases continue to make their way through the court system and expose public agencies to significant monetary liability. But as far as the long-winded answer to your question about the legislation involved, there's state legislation in place. I'm not saying that's perfect here for what we're talking about, but the qualified immunity, which is the underlying basis for the Scott case, is a federal issue, and that has to be taken up at the federal level. Otherwise, we're just subject to the holdings of the Ninth Circuit or the Supreme Court or circuit courts across the country. So legislatively, if that's going to be handled in a way that gives greater protection to public employees, it has to be done at the legislation would have to be done at the federal level. So,
and I understand our government people are still recovering from the week in D.C., but so it would be great to have them work on it. But one of the premises of that Scott decision was that there was no crime being committed. And so at the state level, we could call things crimes. We could make things crimes that, for example, if I'm calling because I'm seeing somebody having a mental health problem, unless they're incapacitated, I'm calling because I'm afraid for me or afraid for them. And if I'm afraid for me, that's an assault. So something at the state level that starts thinking of these calls are classified as assaults or some other crime is what I was kind of like, let's get creative and figure out how we can get these calls to be considered crimes so that that immunity is a lot stronger while we continue to work on the federal side, the legislative side, because that's going to be a glacial pace to get something done there. But at least with our contacts at the state, we should be able to get something done now that can help erode the weaknesses that we have under this current law. So,
Can I answer a portion?
Director Weber?
Shed light on- So while we were in Washington this last week, numerous of us or persons were in congressional offices. This subject matter was brought up, and what was asked of us was, because we are so far ahead of this than the rest of the nation, is if we can get them the data we have to this point, and then there's some other studies that are going on, and as soon as those studies, we can then shed light on that. But as soon as the team recovers, I'm sure we will get a summary of what had happened there and can inform the entire board of what has happened. But it was brought up in various, with various congressmen. So they're aware of it right now on the surface, but we need to get them more data. So
right.
that touches your question.
excellent, thank you. Comments, questions? Director Rice?
Just Chief Daly, Rudnicki, and Chief Keeley. First, I have ultimate faith in you and trust in you, and thank you. I know that I've been pretty vocal about this. It concerns you like it concerns me. Thank you for the light that you brought on this today. Chief Daly, we worked together on active shooter things on a very, very large scale. So you're the tip of the spear, not just for Metro Fire, but I believe for the state. This is an issue all over. We just happen to be the ones discussing it. I want to begin, and we should engage Local 522 because they have access for state asks. I get myself in trouble if I get ahead of myself, but they have access to federal asks. Metro Fire is very uniquely poised right now in a couple of areas to really take this on potentially. I can tell you that legislation at a state level around a court decision is difficult at best. But this is we're in uncharted territory. A couple of years ago, I was part of a task force with the governor on Proposition 1, which essentially started as care court and getting folks with schizophrenia and continuous 911 calls over behavioral health and mental health calls into a system, which is now called the CARE Act. It has morphed to be a little bit more user-friendly, but there's a system now that people can be enrolled if we partner with fire response, EMS response, our county, and LEMSA, and the hospitals. Where we have the mobile integrated health teams, and I stay up late at night for stupid stuff, but one of them was, why wouldn't we figure out a way to hire, essentially, I don't know what else to call them, but 2 of our own police officers that worked for Metro Fire, and they were part of the mobile integrated health response, probably 2 per shift. I know that's down the road, but the forward thinking on that, I believe there's money there at a federal and statewide level to put something like this in play, because we would probably be one of the only organizations that could really begin to be proactive in the CARE Act arena. Right now, our medics and engine companies, we're response-oriented. We don't do preventative work. We've never been geared for that except for fire prevention. EMS is something totally different, and that's just beyond us. But mobile integrated health is not, and that's starting down the road. I have a day job, you guys know that. I would make the hours available to help try to push that forward, because I do think you're onto something. I appreciate everything I heard tonight, Chief Daly, and I know that you will do this. We just have to have the boots on the ground, whether it's a company officer or the battalion chief, have to have the confidence to say, we're not going to do this. We're not going to go. And we all need to approach it. Medicine is called, you practice medicine. It's not exact, and we do the absolute best that we can. But our medics in the street and our members, are we doing chemical restraints with ketamine and some of that stuff?
It's in our protocol.
That is a huge huge responsibility. And I think our eyes in this were just beginning to open up since the last board meeting. You know, the firefighter paramedic was stabbed to death in Kansas City on a transport. I don't know all of the details, but I'm sure there's a behavioral health component to that somehow, some way. And we are light years ahead in this discussion. I'll do whatever I need to do to support you, the EMS division, the operations division, and however that needs to look, because I have faith in you guys. I know you're doing the right thing. Thank you for taking the time, Chief. Thank you for that direction. We're not done yet, but the right people are on this, so I appreciate it.
Director Rice, if I may just respond to that real quick. Appreciate the comments, and Chief Daly talked about what we're doing. And through all the actions that Chief Daly described, the benefit of going through this exercise, we discovered many things that we can fix and correct. As you said, our men and women are resilient, we have grit, and we're looking for opportunities to serve the public. What you brought up tonight about mobile integrated health and what that could look like in the future, it was probably about 8-9 months ago, you mentioned specifically about telemedicine and what does that data look like. And in that mobile integrated health program, we tried that about 1.5 years ago. And it was, we had some software limitations, but as you said, being on the tip of the spear and finding opportunity, here in the next week, a telemedicine component, a trial is going to be started, a 90-plus day trial under the mobile integrated health to try to reach the patients. Now with that, there's HIPAA compliance and all the things you need to do, just like a healthcare worker uses. A quick example of that, when we look for opportunities, just in the last couple of weeks, we had a call in the district, a minor with suicidal tendencies. Nobody can access them safely and all these things. And one thing you said is the company officers and the battalion chiefs and those making the difficult decision, they don't have enough information. So how do we get enough information? Well, another part of this trial is we did exercise trying to see the patient and get a visual on them through technology. And the patient needed help and they wanted help, but we couldn't go in because we didn't know it was safe. The end result was there's some things to clean up, processes and procedures. We recognize some faults and some things we will put in place with the policy. But the end result, that minor was not home alone. We got him into a hospital. He got the mental health care he needed, and it worked out. It's an amazing story. But it goes to show the situations we have found ourselves in at Metro Fire and the fire service. I hate to say it, COVID, APOT, which we just overcame. And now this in front of us, I'm confident we're gonna find these solutions and we're gonna make our system stronger because of the work and dedication and grit that our men and women are showing, and they're finding and bringing the solutions. And so I've been really pleased, and I'm very optimistic that we're assessing risk, we're taking the appropriate steps, but we're also finding solutions. We're not just wiping our hands and leaving patients at home, which obviously that's where all of our hearts are. So I just wanted to make sure I brought that up from what's next and things that we're looking at, so you're aware of that. So thank you.
I appreciate you putting up with me, and thank you. Keep it up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I echo Brian's faith in this team big times, because clearly we have collective decades and decades of experience, so that's really helpful. I would say that somebody used tip of the spear. This organization is very comfortable being tip of the spear on so many different things, and I would ask you, since it's the 9th District Court that started this whole bucket of, you fill in the bucket, why don't we call for impacted agencies within the jurisdiction of that 9th district to come here and do a group think on solutions? Because all the different jurisdictions that this would impact have got to have just a boatload of great ideas that maybe we could benefit from, because we're not the only EMS agency in the 9th district. We're not the only group that probably has had a single individual, even with his attorneys, make this determination, because I know there's sheriffs that have made other determinations. And so I would just encourage us to, here's this opportunity for us to be at the tip of the spear and once again, nationally address something that eventually may be a national crisis, and us lead that to get all that input. And then the final thing, and I'm sorry that you get me worked up about this one, big times, is I would strongly encourage us as you think about all the data that we constantly are collecting at the PSAP and other places, that we start to look at using AI as a way to get a much deeper understanding of where that address, that patient, their history with us, those kind of things, to further inform that decision, I think, Chief, that you said about from maybe marginal to moderate. I would love that we use all the data at our, at our hands and bring that together so that decision is informed with past calls to that facility, maybe if we can work it out, their medical background, all that kind of stuff to help us when we make that determination or update the captain as they're thinking about going out of the house. He or she has access to a bucket load of data that we would not think about potentially. If we've been to that place and it turned violent, automatically no go kind of thing. So I would just hope that somebody's putting a phone call on an AI expert and saying, can we collect this data from multiple data points so that it further informs our staff? I don't know that our current CAD or whatever y'all are magical tools you're using includes that piece of it, but AI is a powerful, powerful tool to collect that. I think we need to jump on board. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Director Stark.
Of the calls that the police department is not responding to, or the sheriff, I'm sorry, I wonder what percentage of those are 5150. I worked in a different county when I was active, and when it was a 5150, we required officers to be there to make that kind of determination. I don't know, you probably thought of this or batted around perhaps, but maybe figuring out a way to, if there are a lot of 5150s in there, to use that as a method to compel them to respond to the call.
That's a great thought through. From the conversations I've been part of, I'll kick it over to Chief Daly here in a minute, is we agree that would be a great tool to assess further the patient. And from the information we've had, the line in the sand that's being drawn is if there's not a crime being committed, that's as far as it's going. And there isn't a response, regardless of the mental health need or status for that. Now, what has happened in the county, the other resource for 5150s are these mental health experts employed by the county. But again, they're not going to the scene unless it's safe either. But they can assist patients through that 5150 process and get them the support they need. You have more?
Yeah, nothing else really to add other than it is still the state's mandate that a peace officer or a law enforcement officer be the one that placed a person on a 5150 hold. So we as firefighter paramedics don't have that authority to do that here in the state of California. So in the absence of law enforcement with us, if a person says they don't want to go with us, we legally can't make them go. So that is another challenge.
Currently, 988 is exploring the option to place people on 5150 holds, but it takes training and approvals. But that, right now, that is a very large gap for people that are truly in need of mental health services, yet they are adamantly refusing to go. There is no one that's going to force them to get to a facility if a crime's not being committed, and that's really unfortunate for that person that's suffering.
And for the family, right, Chief?
Absolutely.
You got to think about those families too. They call 911 and it goes nowhere. That is not acceptable in a first world country. It just simply isn't. Thanks, guys. I'm just really proud of y'all for the work you're doing.
Thanks so much, Chief. Appreciate all of it. All right, moving on, action items. Action item number 1, nomination of special district representatives for the Sacramento County Treasury Oversight Committee. Ms. Ripberg.
Yes, good evening. This was brought to my attention by Dave O'Toole and then additionally the County of Sacramento. He is currently he is the special district representative for the Sacramento County Treasurer Oversight Committee, and his term will be expiring at the end of June. And so if he would like to remain on that committee, and if so, if he can remain on the committee, we would need a motion and a second. You would need to nominate him. And then we would turn that in to Sacramento County, and that is due by May 30th. And then after that, there would be a vote that the board would vote on that as well, on that. Yeah.
there are no other volunteers,
There are,
I would make such a motion.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Mr. Chairman,
So,
yes,
yeah, do we need a motion or
we
just?
do. We need a
Okay.
motion to,
Nominate?
yes, to nominate him.
Okay, sounds like I've got a motion to nominate
got a-
CFO
I'll do a
Tool,
second.
Yeah,
and we got a second, so let's
Okay.
call that.
All right,
we don't want to keep you away from all that fun.
yeah. Director Gould?
Did we hear a candidate statement?
No.
Okay, the thumb is up. Aye.
Okay, Director Stark? Aye. Director Clark?
Aye.
Director Rice? Aye. Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Weber?
Aye.
Director Costa?
Aye.
President Wood?
Aye,
Thank you, motion passes.
congratulations.
Condolences.
All right.
Campaign.
Moving on to reports, I have nothing to report from the president's chair, so we'll move on to the fire chief's report. Chief House, good afternoon, good evening.
And I'm going to follow suit. Good evening. I have no report this evening.
Standing, welcome back.
Thank you.
Moving on then, operations report, Deputy Chief Mitchell's out.
Yep.
Is there someone in lieu of him?
Negative. I think we have no reports for any of the branches tonight.
Outstanding. Moving on then to Local 522. Good evening.
All right, evening, President Wood, Board of Directors, Chief House, and the members of the public. Just a couple things, keep it short here. First of all,
Please tell us who you are.
oh, sorry, I'm
Yes.
Brett Randall, Director, 522. Short here, let me look at a couple notes that I had. First of all, Sean, Matt, and Trevor wanted to say thanks for their time back in DC for Cap to Cap. They said it was great to meet with the board members, Rancho Cordova, Citrus Heights, Board of County Supervisors, and the different businesses that were there and members of the community. They said it was, they value those relationships, and they had a lot of good, positive and successful conversations. And they just wanted to thank everyone for their time and look forward to working together in the future and keep building those relationships. The next thing, Monday, we'll be out at Birdies for Burns for the golf tournament. So we're excited to be out there. Great event. Hope to see some of you guys out there. And then we also have CPF Ledge this week that we'll be participating in as well. That's all I really have. The other thing I want to say is we want to thank the district and Chief Keeley and Chief Daly and Chief Fernicki. They have been talking with us on the direction of where they're going with all the mental health stuff, working together for that. And they know when we're ready for their ask or for us to get a little bit more involved, we'll be there for them. So just want to say thanks to that. And that's all I got. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Any comments, questions for Firefighter Randall? Director Weber, sorry.
Yes, you asked for us to be at the event. Are there spots open for us to golf?
I was hoping you already registered. I'm not sure. I'll have to look.
And then what would our role be once you leave and start golfing? I mean, what is our purpose for being there other than golfing?
For the charity, for the Burn
that-
Institute, yeah. So it's a charity for the Burn Institute. So
Okay,
great
so
for them.
post golfing would be beneficial for us to be at that banquet portion, or what?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to
Yeah,
get
of course,
a
yeah.
grasp of
Yeah, the banquet probably around, what, 3, 4-ish?
Okay, thank
I
you.
would say, but I can get back to you on times. But yeah, always welcome. Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Moving on to committee and delegate reports, there's no report from the executive committee. Comm Center JPA, Deputy Chief Fiorica.
No report.
Getting used to speaking without that mustache, I see. It's coming back. All right, good. Director Jones, Finance and Audit Committee, are you up for this?
Oh, there's no report. You can see on the agenda our next meeting has been scheduled. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Costa, Policy Committee.
Thank you. The policy committee met today. We had 2 administrative policies. The first one was on the reinstatement hiring policy. This took into account some changes to the paramedic upgrade and reinstatement guidelines policy. The second one was Public Records Act policy. First time it's been updated in quite some time. The committee provided some feedback to staff for some revisions, so those will be coming back to the policy committee. Our next meeting is June 12th.
Thank you so much, Director. Moving on to board members' questions and comments. Director Jones.
Thank you, no comment.
Director Gould?
Appreciate that, Mr. Chair. Just thank you to all of you who are involved in getting us out and back from Washington, D.C. We had some very good conversations, primarily the one with our legislative team that works for us in very specific areas. And they got their finger on the pulse of a couple of things that are happening nationally. And they told us straight to our faces, you guys are so far ahead. And so that's refreshing to hear, because that comes right back to not only what we do here, but what the men and women in the organization do. So kudos to all of you to have them recognize that we're so far ahead of most of the issues that at the federal level they're addressing. So that was quite nice. And then thank you for all the reports tonight. And just really thank you to all of you that are working your tails off every single day to keep us ahead. It's really easy on this side of the dais to know that's going on. As Brian says, we stay awake at night for some of the weirdest things. And just you guys are helping us with our circadian rhythms. So thank you.
Thank you, Director. Director Rice?
Contained, thank you.
Director Stark?
I just wanted to thank staff for, that brought us to the Ledge conference in DC. I've been to a number of those and had to do it myself. And they did a really outstanding job, and I wanted the chief to know that and thank them for all the hard work.
Thank you, Director. Director Clark?
No comment.
Director Weber?
No comments.
Director Costa?
Thank you. Just one comment. Chief Nygren, thank you for your patience and your diligence on the item that we had tonight. And just thank you for taking the time to work with the community and the board. Thank you.
And I'll echo what's already been said and just put another plug in for the Burn Institute. The Night at the Green is coming up at the golf course over off 80 and 50, and for some reason the name is Hagen Oaks. It's coming up at Hagen Oaks on the 31st. Tickets can be obtained at the Burn Institute's website. We're going to recess now to close session, and hopefully we won't see anyone here when we get back. Thank you.
Bio break, Mr. President?
Yes.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
What the heck happened to this thing? Oh, here it is.
Council Laver, would you report out for us, please?
Yes, thank you, President Wood. The board met in closed session under the closed session item, agenda item number 1, the matter of the workers' compensation case involving Christopher Rogers and the Sacramento Fire District. The board voted unanimously to give authority to its third-party administrator to approve a settlement of that workers' compensation claim. And that's it.
Thank you very much. That concludes the meeting. We'll see you all back here on May 22nd at 6 o'clock.